While I have this microphone, I feel like speaking, but I'm going to see if we can get on to dinner. Maybe Lenny will let me speak later. Would you please stand? I'd like to call upon Father Norton to say grace.
Before I begin, I feel that I'm probably, along with Tommy, one of the most legitimate people here. Both of us are diabetics. And after all these years, Tommy's pushing 49 and I'm pushing 39. And I figured after all these years why he and I share so much in common. We're both too sweet. Father, bless those who serve diabetics, both in research, in the caring, those who donate to support the cause of diabetes. Bless this night. Keep the speakers gentle and more generous in praise of Tom Norton than grilling him to death, so he won't be too well grilled or roasted. Help all of us to laugh and enjoy this night given for such a noble cause. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you for coming and spending the evening with us and supporting the educational programs of the Diabetes Association of Greater Fall River. It is also my pleasure on behalf of the Board of Directors to thank the fundraising committee in particular and the members of the head table, especially the gentlemen who have taken the time to prepare for the roast. And I would like to thank Senator Norton for allowing us to do this to him. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Richard Costa, who is the chairman of the fundraising committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. On behalf of the fundraising committee, I too would like to thank Senator Norton for allowing us to do this to him tonight. In addition, a special thanks to our panel of distinguished roasters. A few other people we must acknowledge. I'd like to thank Lenny Kaplan, our chairman this evening, and Mark Tibitat, our co-chairman. Excuse me. Ann Kelly, who is our executive director, and her entire staff. They did a fantastic job over these last 3 weeks. In addition, the assistance we got from the staff at Senator Norton's office was absolutely fantastic, and we thank them as well. Wonderland costumes for the special guests that you saw walking around the hall this evening. Also, Aircon. Like any other fundraising, the media plays a very big part in fundraising, and for the last 3 weeks, we've had some fantastic coverage. And we owe a lot of this to the Fall River Herald News, WSAR, WHTV Radio, which is broadcasting tonight, and in addition to that, the Greater Fall River Cable, who is also will get this all over again in the future. And last but not least, we'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you a gentleman who I've worked with quite often over the last 3 years on the board, on the executive committee, et cetera, et cetera. He outranks me. He's a captain. I'm only a lieutenant. He's a captain of the fire department in Fall River. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Tibitat.
Thank you, Richard. I just have to go over a few announcements here. Lenny mentioned that our main prize tonight that will be drawn is a dinner from Venus, also a room at the Best Western. What he failed to mention is The limousine has been donated by a very good friend of mine, N&R Limousine Service, Attorney Richard St. Pierre. I'd also like at this time, I did not introduce her before, but she is here. She's over to my left. Ann Kelly, would you please stand? She is the Executive Director of the Diabetes Association of Fall River. And one more quick announcement, and this will be quick before Lenny grabs this mic. As you all can see, Channel 13 is televising this, or rather they are taping it. I just received a schedule. Next week, this program from this evening will be shown Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 o'clock. Next week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 o'clock, there'll be some further airtime. I'll be back down there. My wife also insists that I make an announcement. I think for the people here that know me, they realize I'm colorblind. And she refuses. She dresses me. She's always dressed me. She refuses to take credit for this outfit I have on. And that's thanks to Mr. Kaplan here who chose this for me. Beautiful. I'm in a precarious position up here. Matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to the State House and to listen to Secretary Barry discuss 911, which Senator Norton pushed very, very hard for. And this is in the morning. In the afternoon, I have to go before the Board of Fire Prevention Regulations and lobby for a bill for fire prevention for the state. So I've been told by Senator Norton to say nothing bad about anybody at this head table, or everything tomorrow would go down the toilet. Those were his exact words. So, no. I asked my good friend, Chief McDonald from the Fall River Police Department, I said, for God's sake, the only guy I can say anything about is Lenny. He says, tell him how cheap he is, how he never buys lunch for us. I said, no, I need something funny. He says, well, that's all I can come up with, the fact that he never buys. So, no, it's Frank that never buys. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce your host for the rest of the evening, the one and only low-price Lenny Kaplan.
Hey, I got my opportunity. Everybody's sitting, so here I go. I'm looking over the bridge that crosses over from Fall River to Somerset, especially for Boo Boo Karam. It leads you over to one nut of a guy who's always got that gleam in his eye. Oh, they call me low price, a name that's just right, 'cause I'm the guy who almost gives away all the stuff at Gop Shops and Western Auto. At least a free smile every day. Yeah. Hey. May not be Frank Sinatra, but I do the best I can. I just lost my first customer. Representative Flaherty took off already. Before we go any further, you know, this Mark is a wise guy. He's talking about tuxedos, and I got to tell you the truth. First of all, these tuxedos come through the compliment of Roberts Formals in Fall River, who's very good to us whenever we do anything at all. But I've got to tell you something, Mark. Actually, you were supposed to be wearing this one. I was supposed to be wearing that one. But he told me the truth. That one has been worn by 432 guys before, and this is brand new, so I took the brand new one. So that's that. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, my distinguished roasties or roasters with me, we'd like to introduce, first of all, our very first roaster. He's a gentleman you all know. He's from Fall River, a very prominent attorney, very much involved in many activities throughout this area. He's been active in political circles in the area, and no stranger to roasts. Who can only give bobs and jabs, but can also take them. Ladies and gentlemen, a little tidbit on our roaster, Mr. Jim Clarkin. When Jim was very young, his parents took him to his first ballet. And after watching it for a little while, he turned to his dad and said, hey, Vavo, hey, Zadie, or whatever he called him, why don't they just get taller dancers rather than make them stand on their toes for so long? And talking about the man who stands tall here in Fall River, here he is, a very close friend of Tom's, as well as the campaign manager for Mayor Carlton Viveras. And if that's not enough, the only one of all on the stage here tonight to drive a new Porsche. Ladies and gentlemen, attorney, lawyer, or barrister, let's welcome Mr. Jim Clocken.
This could devolve rather rapidly after that. My name is Jay.
Who cares? I have 2 drinks.
You remember my name when the night is over, Tom. Let me try to get this back on track. Father Norton, distinguished guests, Mrs. Norton, members of the Diabetes Association, and a varied assortment of enemies of Tom Norton. See, Tom still doesn't get it. He's sitting here smiling, proud, and happy. He thinks he's looking at 800 friends. I checked this crowd out. What we got here, Tom, are Republicans,
I doubt it.
unsuccessful job seekers, and a hell of a lot of Mary Fonseca's relatives. These people are not here because they like you, Tom. It's a mean crowd, so get used to it. Now, when I was first asked to participate in this event, the caller from the Diabetes Association asked if I'd be willing to participate in a roast of my state senator. I said, absolutely not. I think the world of Biff McLean. Later, I learned that this fellow, Tom Norton, was in fact a state senator and did represent Fall River. And it turned out all they wanted me to do was to stand up here tonight and make fun of Tom Norton. Seemed like no heavy lifting, so I said, okay. You see, I've always been fascinated by Tom Norton. Never liked the guy, but he's just fascinated me. They also told me when they called that some of Tom's high-powered political friends from his home state would be here tonight. And I fully expected to be sitting on a stage tonight with Governor Martinez from Florida and the mayor of Boynton Beach and Palm Beach. I wasn't disappointed, Mr. Bulger. Instead, we've got Clarkin, Finnegan, Flaherty, and Bulger. On the way over here, my wife said to me, what the hell is this, an Irish disease, this diabetes? I said, good theory, except how do you explain Lenny Kaplan? Now, as you can imagine, it's very difficult, if not intimidating, to be sharing the podium here this evening. The only local guy with 3 of the most acute, urbane political wits in the Commonwealth. I kind of feel like Zsa Zsa Gabor's 5th husband on his honeymoon night. I mean, I know what to do, but I'm just not sure that I can make it interesting. Every elected official in this room, Ronnie Pina, the mayor, everyone within 30 miles has called me in the past 2 weeks. And they've all warned me, under no circumstances are you to mess with Senate President William Bulger. No one ever called him Billy either. They said, do not mess with this man. Well, let me tell you, you guys were all wrong. I met Mr. Bulger at a reception before the dinner, and he's really a very regular, down-to-earth kind of guy. In fact, as I was kissing his ring, he said, just go ahead and call me Eminence tonight. What are you laughing at? That's right, I kissed his ring. The line you were in formed at the rear. Now, among the other Boston big shots here tonight is Charles Flaherty down at the end, who's the majority leader of the House of Representatives. And I ran into a friend of his who happened by my house about a week ago, George Kennedy, the lobbyist. He told me that Charlie grew up in a tenement neighborhood in Cambridge, much like Fall River, and that even as a young man at age 10, he'd earned a nickname. He was called the Charmer. And even today, he has the reputation of being the most charming man in Massachusetts politics. Now, I got into a little argument with Mr. Flaherty before the dinner began. I mentioned to him that I had run into Joan Menard about a week ago and asked her if she was coming tonight. She said, yes, certainly. I've got to be there because Charlie Flaherty is there, and he's promised me that I'm going to be the majority leader. I said, that's great. 2 days later, I ran into Al Heron. He told me the same story, word for word. I mentioned this to Mr. Flaherty. He got angry with me, and he told me to go to hell. But, you know, he's a charmer. He did it in such a nice way, I was looking forward to the trip. Now, Dave Finnegan over here wanted desperately to be mayor of Boston. Unfortunately, he lost in a race to Ray Flynn. I've been talking to him about his political future. He just said to me while we were eating dinner that he's thinking of coming down to New Bedford to challenge Carl Viveris for mayor. Well, I said, Dave, listen, first of all, you've got to be more than witty to beat Viveris. That's a local joke, Dave. But, Dave, there's hope for you. Given your demonstrated knowledge of the geography of southeastern Massachusetts, you would appear to be eminently qualified to be governor of the state. Low-price Lenny. Oh. Continues to give Fall River a bad name. You can imagine what these guys are going to be telling people in Boston tomorrow. They met a guy down in Fall River who reached the zenith of commercial success by sleeping with a kazoo for over 20 years. Now, Tom Norton gave me two very simple orders when he sent me up here tonight. He said, be very funny and very short. So try this. President Dukakis. Now, George Kavarian, the Speaker of the House, was supposed to be here tonight. Unfortunately, he had an accident. Somebody pulled the rugs out from under him. Tom Norton told me that if I were kind to him in my remarks tonight, that he would give me a ride home in his big black Lincoln Town Car. Tell me I got a better offer from Bobby Correa. Bobby Correa told me if I told the truth about you here tonight, he'd give me a ride home in his big black Lincoln Town Car. The one with the flags and the front fenders and that big whip antenna. Oh, enough about these guys. Let's talk about you. Tom Norton claims to have been born in Fall River. However, much to his credit, and unlike Bill Weld, he does not claim to have been born without original sin. Tom began talking in the delivery room and just never stopped. In fact, he was 13 years old before he realized that his first name was not Shut Up. He had a long and record-setting career at Durfee High School in Fall River. It was long in the sense that it took him 7 years to graduate. He set a number of records. Among them, he was voted king of his junior prom for 4 consecutive years. When he ultimately graduated, the school committee gave him a standing ovation, a diploma, and awarded him tenure. He spent several years in the textile industry actually working as a cutter. And you see, Tom believed that hard work never killed anybody, but Tom said, hell, why take a chance? And entered politics in 1971, 72. I asked him why he chose to enter politics as a Democrat. And Tom explained to me that he was a Democrat because his father was a Democrat and his grandfather was a Democrat. And I said, Tom, given that insipid, spurious logic, what would you be today if your father and grandfather had been jackasses? He said, a Republican. I asked Tom if he believed in luck. He said, absolutely. He said, how else do you account for Carl Viveris' success in politics? Years ago, Carl Viveris and Tom Norton were kind of the young cubs, the young lions of politics in Fall River. And there was at that time a little bit of a rivalry between them. And I remember when Carl was first elected mayor, I witnessed an argument between them. And at the end of that argument, Tom became a little incensed, and he stood up and stuck his index finger in the mayor's face and said, I'd rather be right than be mayor of Fall River. And Carl just smiled and said, don't worry, Tom, you'll never be either.
like the campaign manager.
Now, Bob Carrere over here tells me that Tommy is always criticizing his weight. And I say, Bob, don't worry. Having Tom Norton criticize your weight is like having Emmett Kelly, King of the Clowns, criticize your wardrobe. Had lunch with Tom last week. Asked him if he'd like a drink. He became very offended. He said, I'd rather commit adultery than have a glass of beer. I said, who wouldn't? I didn't mean that, Catherine. I like beer. Now, I could stand here tonight and call Tom a fat pal, but I won't. I will tell you, one, that he's an elected official, and two, that his favorite food is seconds. I could stand here tonight and accuse Tom Norton of flagrant nepotism, but I won't. I will tell you that Tom believes in full employment, and he also believes that charity begins at home. Last summer, I asked him for a job for my daughter down at Horseneck. You know what his answer was? I didn't know we were related. I interviewed Tom's lovely wife because I wanted to give a balanced presentation here. And I asked her to provide me with some of his positive attributes. And she very graciously assured me that Tom had a wealth of wonderful and endearing qualities, but she just couldn't recall any of them on such short notice. I talked to her 2 weeks ago, haven't heard a word. 3 weeks ago, I guess, I stood here in this room and I watched Tom give a speech in which he announced his intention to run for re-election to the Senate. The speech was very well received. At the end of the speech, a gentleman who'd been over in the bar area wandered up to Tom, stuck out his hand and said, hey, buddy, he said, I didn't catch your name, but you got my vote. Hell of a speech. He said, we got to get rid of that bum Norton. Tom gets to speak last tonight. I had to listen to him practice his speech. He then asked me what I thought. I know, I told him it's good and it's original. What I really meant, Tom, was the part that's good is not original, and the part that's original is not good. In fact, Tom, if stealing jokes were a crime in this Commonwealth, you'd be on death row by tomorrow morning after giving that speech. Tom, as you know, is an amazing speaker. Every time he contradicts himself, he's right. And you have to be very careful quoting him, because if you quote him accurately, it's called mudslinging. Last week, he held his Senate colleagues spellbound with his usual oratory as he tackled our current budgetary crisis in the usual Tom Norton kind of way. And I quote, this is what he said. He said, at this point in the Commonwealth's history, a choice must be made. A path must be chosen. One path leads to despair and economic collapse. The other to bankruptcy and extinction. Let us pray that God gives us the wisdom to choose correctly. What's frightening about that, ladies and gentlemen, what's frightening about that is not that Tom Norton said it, we come to expect that, but the fact that all 40 senators and 80 doorkeepers, part-time doorkeepers, stood up and applauded. I mean, if it weren't for guys like Tom Norton, we'd have nothing to laugh at in Massachusetts today. Was a time when a fool and his money was soon parted. Getting to be what's happening to everybody in Massachusetts. You know, for years, Tom embraced and fought hard for two very unpopular issues: nuclear power plants and racetracks. I can remember Tom Norton, I think he proposed knocking down the old Durfee High School in the midst of that debate and putting a nuclear power plant on the site. Now, Tommy finally caught on. It was about a year ago, a late bloomer. Somebody in his staff finally told him about a thing called 3 Mile Island in Chernobyl. And the first subtle hint of Tom's newfound environmental sensitivity was just about a year ago. That's when he began referring in public to the Fall River sewage treatment plant as a turd sanctuary. Big move for Tom. A week later, he proposed not a racetrack, but an equine environmental preserve for the Fall River watershed. 3 months ago, he joined to Save the Bay. Last week, he claims now that he was a founding member 25 years ago. 2 days ago, he addressed the Sierra Club, and he told them, he described himself as a grizzled veteran of the environmental wars. Well, that's true. What he didn't tell him is he spent the last 20 years fighting on the other side. To be fair, Tom was an original founding member of an environmental organization. It was called Save the Whales. I suggest to you, though, that his membership was motivated not by environmental concerns, but out of self-preservation. That's your name, Boo Boo. Don't boo me. Pina, are you laughing? I may have some bad news for you. There's a woman down on the corner table there who has not laughed once. Now, that's either my wife, who has no sense of humor, or else you got a problem, because we have another unidentified female corpse in Bristol County. Let me tell you one environmental story. This is going to embarrass Tom. Tom, I'm sorry. I did not mean to embarrass you here tonight. But Tom spends a little bit of time down in Florida. And about 6 months ago, this is a great embarrassment to Tom, but it's better that you should hear it from me than from the press. They can be cruel. He was brought before a U.S. District Court judge in the federal court in Palm Beach. This judge happened to be an ardent environmentalist, a member of the Sierra Club. And when the indictment was read as to what Tom was charged with, he was absolutely outraged. The indictment alleged that Tom had gone out into the Everglades National Forest with a rifle and shot a whooping crane. Not only did he shoot the bird, he thereupon cooked it and ate the thing. The judge couldn't believe it. He said, "Mr. Norton," he said, "how could you do such a thing?" And Tom did what came natural, pleaded ignorance. He said, "Oh, I didn't know. I mean, birds are birds to me. Could have been a seagull, a crow." And he said, "Oh, come now, don't you read the newspapers? Don't you watch television?" He said, "Well, yeah, but I just didn't know. I didn't know it was a whooping crane." He said, "Do you realize we're just fellow travelers on spaceship Earth? That the whooping crane species took 120 million years to develop. There were 37 left, and because of what you did, there are now 36. Tom said, "Look, Judge, I just didn't know what it was." He said, "Well, I can't believe it, but let me ask you." He said, "Why did you cook and eat the bird?" He said, "Well, didn't have any lunch. It was late in the day. I was hungry. I ate it. What can I tell you, Judge? I just don't know much about this stuff." Finally, the judge said, "Listen, before I determine bail, let me ask you something. I'm curious." He said, "What does whooping crane taste like?" And Tom, with that winning smile of his, put his arm on the bench. He said, "Well," said Judge, "to tell you the truth," he said, "it's a little gamier than sea otter, but it's not quite as salty as bald eagle." I'd like to apologize to any elected officials whom I have failed to offend tonight, particularly Mary Fonseca. But I feel in the case of Mary Fonseca that she has already suffered the greatest indignity in losing the election to Tom Norton. And I should end this on a note of fairness. As you think about public officials tonight and in the months ahead, remember, it's 90% of the politicians that give the other 10% a bad name. Think about that. And finally, in all seriousness, I can still recall the day 16 years ago when I first came back to Fall River, bought a house on the corner of Madison Street and President Avenue, when I first met Tom Norton. He stopped by one Saturday afternoon, introduced himself, and he spent 2 hours talking to me. When he left that day, I viewed him as an intelligent, honest, hard-working, and very effective public servant. And Tom, I want to tell you publicly here tonight that I'll always cherish those initial misconceptions that I had about you. Mr. Whip, warm up that getaway car. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jay Clarking, Attorney Jay Clarking. Oh, my gosh. You know, Jay, the worst part of all of this is I feel bad for the other 3 roastees that have to follow you. That was just great. Our next roaster is roaster number 2, David Finnegan. Presently, David is working for a prestigious Boston law firm. Never used a word that big in my life. Who wrote it? Prior to this, David was one of the most listened to talk show hosts, next to me probably, both TV and radio in the Boston and surrounding areas. He has held an elective post on the Boston School Committee for many years and came very close to becoming the mayor of Boston. A couple of quick tidbits. Here's a guy in his younger days who always wanted to be in show business. He always wanted to be macho to all the girls in his area when he was being brought up. I think he comes from Marlboro because you see his real name is Abraham Ginsberg, but he changed his name to Finnegan when he became a showman. But to continue, even during the hottest days of summer, Dave would always ride around in his cars with the windows up, so he would believe he had air conditioning. And talking about wind and air, another story I hear tell about Dave is the time he took his first ride in a helicopter. The plane crashed shortly after taking off, and although no one was hurt, luckily, he said he was getting cold up there and turned off the big fan. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome from the Boston area, Marblehead or wherever, the attorney himself, Dave Finnegan.
Thank you, Lenny. That Lenny is great, isn't he? He thinks he's low price. For another $50, we could have had Larry Glick. I know, because Larry charges $50 a shot. We could have had him, no sweat. That's a great-looking jacket. I don't care if nobody's ever worn it before. There's a reason for that. Won't help, Lenny. It's Dorchester I was from, by the way. Dorchester, yeah. And with a jacket like that, you'd fit in nicely in the back bay. Johnny Carson once presented one of his great Carsoni deals where he gives you the answer and you guess the question. You've seen that shtick, have you not? And the answer was Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. And the question was, name two guys from the back bay and the thing they keep their money in. Lenny would have done great up there. Thanks for coming, Lenny. You're a good sport. And that Clackett is a great guy, isn't he? He comes here to roast Tom Norton and kicks the hell out of us. I couldn't figure that out at all, but obviously he's got no business in Boston whatsoever. All his money must be local. And plenty of that, I'll bet. Outside, he said to me, you know, he says, I'm campaign manager for Tom Norton. I said I didn't know that, but I knew he must have had one. He said, I'm also campaign manager for Carlton Viveros. I said, that's an interesting thing. Any guy who can do that simultaneously is a man to be reckoned with, I knew, so I drew back immediately. And I looked at Viveros, and then I looked back to Norton, and they were good pals. They were shaking hands, and I could see the sincerity right through the bandages. Clackett thought that was great stuff. Imagine a man playing both sides of the street like that, Mr. President. Geez, we wouldn't do that in Boston. Tell Ray Flynn I said hello, Carlton, will you, at the next meeting? First-class guy and a friend of Carlton's, I'm sure. At any rate, it is great to be here. Why not? With my record, frankly, I'm glad to be anywhere. I told my wife tonight I was going to spend the night with Venus de Milo. She said, just another failure, Dave. She's a big rooter of mine, though. She's trying to help me out. It is great to be here tonight, but what can you say about a fellow who was born to parents of Irish heritage, of modest means, who worked hard, got an education, became popular in his community, and ultimately was sent to the Massachusetts State Senate by the people of his home area? That's a wonderful thing to have happen. There's no question about that. But enough about Bill Bulger. Let's get on to Tom. Norton, they used to call him in the house. Says, honest to God, Norton. Like he was Gleason's sidekick. People would stop you in the hallways and say, have you seen Norton? So I think he's in the sewer. I don't know where he is. Norton. Nobody ever gave him a first name. I knew him for 10 years. They used to call him Bill, Jack. I didn't know. So I called him Norton, and he kind of liked me. He said, Finnegan's not a bad guy. I knew Tom when he was on the Energy Committee. Does anybody remember that? What a piece of work. He's on the Energy Committee, and he's fumbling for an idea that might work, you know. People are waiting in lines at gas stations. Everybody's grumbling. He tells me, geez, I leave for work from Fall River. People are saying, will you straighten this out, Tom? He thinks he can straighten out the energy crisis from the State House. So he has us do a little research in those days about what might be a good idea. Tom came up with windmills. He said, they're clean, they're safe, and they're reliable. I said, how the hell do you know? He says, I checked. He said, I read it. It's in Holland. He said, they do the whole energy deal in Holland with these windmills. I said, geez, I don't think so. I think they did it years ago, but I don't think they still do. He says, call them up. So I did. I called them up. He said, how'd you make out? I said, I couldn't get through. There was a power failure. He says, well, he says, for crying out loud, he said, you know, Eli Whitney didn't quit in his first failure with the steamboat. I said, the steamboat, for Christ's sake, that was the cotton gin. He says, I don't care about his drinking. He said, for General Grant was a first-class drunk, for Christ's sake, we might have lost the First World War without him. He said, Jesus, Tom, it was the Civil War. He says, just like you media guys, make a tough problem harder with facts. Then he got on to nuclear energy. You remember nuclear? He skipped over solar, by the way. He was going to go to solar, but he didn't know quite how to get a grab on it. You know, the old joke about how we're going to do one better than go to the moon, we're going to go to the sun. The guy says, how the hell are you going to do that? He says, we thought of this, we're going at night. The joke is not that old from the looks of things. Still got life in it, little bounce in that joke. Not bad, not bad. He took himself very seriously, though, on the energy issue, and he finally came down on a nice, safe, reliable, clean issue like nuclear energy. It was beautiful stuff. Eddie King was running for governor. You remember Eddie King? Yeah. He was big on nuclear power plants, too. And Tom did a lot of work in the nuclear area, and he was never discouraged. That's what I admire about him most. He was never discouraged no matter what happened to nuclear power plants. Tom was never discouraged. I told him about 3 Mile Island, and he said, the hell with that, isn't my district. It's not that big a deal. He says, how many people could be living on an island that's only 3 miles long? He says, don't make a big thing of it. When Chernobyl blasted all over the lot, he said, well, hell, that's the Russians, Christ. They never do anything right. He said, this stuff is going to work. I once reminded him that the Clamshell Alliance was having a major rally to beat his brains in the State House lawn. He says, hey, look, anybody who earns their living digging quahogs in New Bedford isn't going to bother me. So right away I knew we were dealing with somebody unique in the area of energy. There was no question about that. There were times, in fact, in his early days where he was pretty well fueled himself. But he managed to get to the Energy Committee meetings on a regular basis. Sometimes a high-octane basis, and sometimes a super unleaded basis. And those were his best days, I can assure you. But he moved on to bigger and better stuff. Racetracks. No man ever fell in love with a racetrack faster than Tom Norton. Tom began to punctuate all of his speeches in the Senate with a whinny. He had it down to a science. He'd simply wind up every speech with a... You never knew which side of the issue he was on. He was a great man on racetracks, without doubt. I once asked him, how long have you been the chairman of the Government Relations Committee, Tom? And he thought for a minute, and then he said, is that getting back there? See, he was counting with his feet. Counting with his feet. The horses count with their feet. All right. At any rate, he did that. There was a young kid at the State House one day when Tom was running a meeting on the race business. You know, if it weren't for Tom, by the way, there wouldn't be any racing at all at Suffolk Downs. There isn't any racing, by the way, at Suffolk Downs. They don't have any. Matter of fact, if you want to watch a horse race, thanks to Tom's leadership, you got to go all the way to New Hampshire. You can go to Rockingham. He took good care of horse racing, I assure you. Next, we're putting you in charge of poverty, Norton. There'll be none of that either when he's through. He once was talking to Buddy LaRue. He was very close to Buddy LaRue. Do you know who Buddy LaRue is, the former trainer for the Celtics who made $746 million by some mysterious set of means? And he's once-time owner of the Red Sox and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, that's a good friend of Tom's, as he'll tell you. He and Buddy are very close. And a kid said to me one day when Tom was giving Buddy a dressing down before the committee, he said to me, you know, he says, this Norton's not that tough. He said, I'm thinking of taking him on myself. I said, are you really? I said, how tall do you think LaRue is? He said, geez, he can't be much more than 5'3". I said, well, he was 6'5" when Norton started on him at 6 o'clock this morning, and he's getting smaller by the minute. Tommy's been a great guy up at the State House. He's been a great guy all around town, near as I can determine it, because everywhere I go, people say to me, how's your pal Tom Norton? And I said, who? Tom Norton, pal of mine? Nothing to do. I play St. Peter faster than any man in New York when he comes through. I do remember, however, that Tom is one of the kindest and most compassionate and most generous people I know, and I will illustrate it by an anecdote I shared with him just a few short years ago. There was a fellow by the name of Aaron Shinberg who used to serve in the House of Representatives. Mr. President will remember Aaron Shinberg, I'm sure. He was a delightful fellow, and he had fallen on not the best of times, as they say in Irish families, but he was a good lad all the same. And Tom and I had gone over to Suffolk Downs, where Tom had all the winners in advance. I don't know how he did that. But he had them all in advance at any rate, and he won about $12,000 betting on the races. I won about $40, and I often wondered why I was there at all. But anyway, he picked up about $12,000, and he's got the stuff all rolled up, you know, in 20s and 10s, you know, the stuff they pay off on the racetrack. He's got money in all the pockets. He's making a mess of it. So we're on the way out of the racetrack, and we get in the back of that big black town car, and we're sitting in the back of the car. The windows are rolled up, you know, the shaded windows, and nobody can see and everything, and he's having a great time counting the cash. So I said, Tom, look, put this elastic around that money, for God's sakes, and keep the thing in order. So he rolls it all up. I had a big fat elastic, and he puts it around the money, puts it back in his pocket. Well, we get 2 blocks up the street, and there's poor Aaron Shinberg, one-time big state representative, down on his luck. He's shuffling along. He's half in the bag, and his shoes are so worn out that the sole on his shoe is broken, you know, and it's flapping. Every time he walks, the thing is flapping. Tommy said to me, Jesus, look at this. He said, drive a pullover. He said, honest to God, Dave, look at this. He says, Aaron Shinberg, Jesus, he said, the least we can do is give him a hand. He puts the window down, takes the roll of bills out of his pocket. I'm flabbergasted by his generosity. He says, Aaron, Tommy Norton. Aaron said, geez, Tommy, how are you? He says, great. He says, takes the elastic off the bills, throws the elastic out the window to Shinberg and says, put that around your shoe. It'll stop it from flapping. Can't get a better guy than that. A lot of people think that Tommy Norton is shy, retiring, bashful, reticent, and a man who's easily overlooked in a crowd. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you he's none of those things, ladies and gentlemen. He's a stand-up guy, and I'd say the same thing even if Tom were here tonight. Tommy has been a good sport over the years, I can tell you that. He's a great guy. He's a great friend. And on a closing note, let me simply say to you that in a time when politicians are set up for big-time bashing, I'm sure it's no different here in Fall River than it is in the rest of the state. But at a time when everybody, it seems to me, who has access to a microphone or a fountain pen can say something tremendously nasty about anybody who serves in public life, we are fortunate to have people who still have the courage and the staying power to serve and to do the job right and to show up and to try, in the face of all of that nonsense they have to put up with, to get the job done. I'm very proud of the fact that Tom has been a friend of mine, and I hope will continue to be for a long time to come. And I'm very, very flattered to be asked here tonight as his friend, and even more delighted to meet the good people of Swansea, who are all of Joan Menard's neighbors, as I understand it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That wasn't a loud enough round of applause. A great guy from the Boston area, Dave Finnegan. talking about racetracks. You know the song Tura Lura Lura? Sure. Goes something like this, Tom. Tura, Tura Lura, Tura Lura lie. If Norton gets his racetrack built, kiss our money goodbye. Oh, my God. Okay. I don't know how we can possibly continue. It has been great so far. Does anybody want their money back? I don't... The DA wants his money back. You didn't pay us yet anyway. You know what the DA told me tonight? Out of the 9 ladies they found recently, next to 8 of them there was a kazoo. The son of a bee, I hope he was lying. And now we go to our next roaster, roaster number 3, who is... Oh, wait a minute, hold on a minute. What is... Sir, we're holding a roast here on someone. Sir, we're holding a roast here on someone. A roast on Senator Tom Norton, so would you please go back to the farm? No. Is there anything we can do for you? Or? Well, gee, we really don't have you on the dais or the what's Fall River, the dais maybe.
Hey, Lenny,
Dais.
give him a chance, Lenny.
All right, should we give this gentleman a chance? He's bigger than I am. All right.
He's bigger than all of us.
Put together. All right, we'll give you a little chance, but don't take too long. We're very busy here this evening. Should I introduce you with something? Oh, okay.
Would you like to sing along with me?
Would I like to sing along with you, looking the way you do and the size you are? I guess I'll have to.
Well, you're going to have to wear dark glasses and a hat.
Okay. Somebody just happened to leave them here, so I'll wear a hat and dark glasses. Okay. Are you ready? Oh, jeez, dark glasses. How do you put them on?
Relax, Lenny.
How do you put dark glasses on and still see? There we are. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Key of what?
Key of L.
Key of L.
It'll sound like L, I'll tell you.
Here's your notes you left me, sir.
I think it's that.
Hey there, Mr. Tommy Norton. We think you are quite important. You are our man in the Senate, which is why when we need money, we don't get it. All for River does adore you, but dear Tommy, we implore you, when you're having some enjoyment, think of us and 13% unemployment. While we're trying to pay our bills, they keep closing all of our mills. While we're listening to Duke's lies, they are trying to steal all of our pork pies. Yes?
Yeah, I got a couple of things I'd like to say, if you don't mind.
Make it fast.
Okay. You know, I hear everybody talking about Mr. Norton's efforts at nuclear energy, and I found out that Mr. Norton's idea of nuclear physics were radioactive suppositories. It was... Imagine the fallout would be kind of tough to clean up. But we've decided, we've come up with a way to solve the deficit in Massachusetts. We're going to raise the tax on liquor. We figured Tom could straighten that out in 3 or 4 weekends. Maestro.
Maestro, go away. Oh, Dookie, baby. Oh, you changed the words on me.
Yeah.
Start over. Start over. Off. Oh.
Betting you're a fan of
With a racetrack and your plan of, but you're really in a real slump. Cause you wanted to build it on our real dump. While the jockeys ride the ponies and the gangsters making loanies, Atlantic City, who will be jealous, BFI is saying they won't even smell us. The song
now is
soon to end, and your money you should spend. Diabetes, word supporting, like a bumper sticker saying, thank you, Tom Norton. Thank you, big guy. Amen. be right back.
Hasn't he got a great voice?
My God, what a big sucker. He could beat the Hulk anytime if they told him to beat him. And now, ladies and gentlemen, roaster number 3 is our majority leader, Charles Flannery. Charlie has served a very distinguished career in the Massachusetts House, always moving to the top, which soon will bring him to the brass ring, he hopes, which is as the Speaker of the Mass House. He has served as chairman of the Mass Democratic Committee for many years and also teaches at Boston University. And just one quick thing about he and Tom. Many years ago, he and Tom were out on the town, and Charlie asked Tom to go out and check the blinkers on his car to see if they were working. Tom got out and Flaherty turned them on. Tom immediately said, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's meet the majority leader of the House, Mr. Charles Flannery. Flannery.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the people who organized tonight's dinner and roast for choosing me, of the 4 roasters, to be the one to follow that class act. And they criticized us, Mr. President. But I do think, before we go any further, we should have a nice round of applause for our Master of Ceremonies tonight. The obvious job of a Master of Ceremonies is to be so incredibly dull and boring that all the speakers appear brilliant by comparison. Lenny, you're the best. When I came down tonight, when I got off Route 24, I was stopped by an old Fall River cop. I know he's an old cop because when he came over to the car, he tried to put his foot up on the running board. He said, license and registration, please. So I gave them to him. I said, what's the difficulty, officer? He said, you went through the stop sign back at the intersection. I said, well, I slowed down. He said, sir, the sign doesn't say slow down. It says stop. If we wanted you to slow down, the sign would have said slow down. We wanted you to stop. That's why the sign said stop. I said, honest to God, you get outside of Boston, you guys are really a bunch of jerks down here. Slow down, stop. What's the big difference? He said, sir, will you get out of the car, please? I got out of the car. He took out his nightstick, started hitting me on the head and shoulders. I said, are you crazy? What are you doing? He said, am I hurting you? I said, you're killing me. He said, do you want me to slow down or do you want me to stop? Then I got in the general vicinity, but I couldn't find this place. I was driving around for about 15 minutes. I was getting more and more worried because Tommy told me, you got to be here by 6 o'clock. So finally I pulled over, and one of your neighbors was walking down the street. I said, hey, John, how do I get to the Venus de Milo? And he answered me pleasantly enough. He said, how did you know my name was John? I said, I just guessed. He said, then guess how to get to the Venus de Milo. I get in here. I had a thirst you could photograph from the drive down. I walk up to the bar, and there's my friend and colleague Al Heron standing there with a beer in front of him. I said, Al, how you doing? He said, great, Charlie. Did you take a drink? I said, of course I do. He said, well, don't take that one. And then I went to the men's room. You know, we know times are tough economically in this state, but I never realized how difficult they are until I was in the men's room here before dinner, and I saw Carlton Viveras, Bobby Correa, and Ron Pina sharing one small cigarette. Bobby Correa, by the way, said to me, Charlie, how tall is a penguin? I said, about 1 foot. Why? He said, you sure it's not 4 foot? I said, no, a penguin's about 1 foot tall, Bobby. Why? He said, I think I ran over a nun on the way over here. When I was talking to Jay Clark in a little room they had out there for the head table before he marched in, I had heard that he was kind of a gregarious, outgoing, funny guy, and he was really a little down and subdued when I got introduced to him, so I pulled him aside. I said, Jay, is there something wrong? He said, well, I probably shouldn't tell you this because we really don't know each other. He said, but I just went to my doctor a couple of days ago, and he told me I have to take a pill a day for the rest of my life. I said, Jay, that's not anything to worry about. Loads of people have to take a pill a day all of their lives. He said, yeah, but he only gave me 4 pills. Tommy and I were talking about what a beautiful day it was today and how lovely it is outside. And he said, Charlie, you're lucky this dinner wasn't held last week. I said, why is that? He said, oh, the weather down here last week at Fall River was unbelievable. He said, Charlie, it was so cold at Fall River last week that we politicians all had our hands in our own pockets. Is this on TV?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
For the TV audience especially.
That's a bluff. They don't have to.
They don't? Okay. Well, just in case. That obviously is a joke. I'm only kidding. I've known this guy, really, what? Don't be laughing. They'll think it's another joke. I've known this guy for 16 years. Before he got elected to the Senate, I sat next to him in the House. I observed him on a daily basis. I go look each and every one of you in the eye and tell you that in all the time I've known him and served with him, he's never taken so much as a quarter. If you can't fold it, he won't accept it. By the way, Tommy, before I forget, Michael Dukakis, who unfortunately is our governor, couldn't be here tonight, but he went... Did I say that wrong? I'm sorry. Michael Dukakis, who is our governor, unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but he sends his fondest regards. Excuse me. I was down here, about... Tommy knelt down after me. He said, Joe, you were with me from the first day I announced for rep. Helped me through my entire political career. Nobody had a better supporter, a more active worker. I'm going to give you twice as much as Joan and Charlie did. I'm going to give you $600. And he wrote out a check and dropped it into the cabinet. The check was for $900. He reached in and took $300 change. A year ago, I was down here. Tommy asked me to come down and be the principal speaker at a communion breakfast over at St. Patrick's for his cousin, Father Norton. Father Norton was a great farm that day, all fire and brimstone. He really gave us the business. He said, stand up, all those who want to be saved and go to heaven. Of course, we all stood up. He said, now sit down. We sat down. He said, now stand up, all those who want to be damned to everlasting hell. And nobody stood in the entire church, except for Tommy. There he stood all by himself, halfway down the middle aisle. Father Norton glared down. He said, Tom Norton, do you mean to tell me that you want to be damned to everlasting hell? And Tommy said, no, Father, but I hated to see you standing there all by yourself. After the Mass, we were walking over to the hall for the communion breakfast, and Tommy said to his cousin, Father, that was a damn fine sermon you gave this morning. And Father Norton said, Tom, I appreciate the compliment, but I wish you wouldn't swear. And Tommy said, it was such a damn fine sermon, I dropped a $100 bill in the collection plate. Father Norton said, the hell you did. Last week, I was walking down the corridor on the third floor in the State House, between the House and the Senate, and I ran into Tommy carrying the door to his office. I said, Tommy, what are you doing carrying the door to your office around with you?
Yeah.
He said, I lost the key. I said, well, you better not lose the door. You won't be able to get back in.
Come in.
He said, not to worry, Charlie. I left the window open. By the way, I don't know if Tommy holds many press conferences down here, but he's always holding press conferences at Beacon Hill. 2 or 3 a week. So much so that the media finally decided to, rather than just sit there and listen to him tell them about what a great job he was doing as chairman of government regs, to ask him some really tough questions and put him to the test. So we held one last week, and after he made his little pitch, opening up to questions, instead of asking questions on the subject matter of the press conference, first guy raised his hand from the Herald. He said, Senator Norton, can you tell us how many seconds there are in a year? Tommy said, that's easy, 12. They started snickering until he listed them. January 2nd, February 2nd, March 2nd. Guy from the Globe said, how many days of the week start with the letter T? Tommy said 2. Guy had a follow-up question. He said, what are they? Tommy said, today and tomorrow. So finally, the guy from the Christian Science Monitor, we have 2 papers up there. We have the Monitor and we have the Monitor. This guy was from the Monitor. Really tough question. He said, Senator, how many D's are there in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? And Tommy didn't even hesitate. He said, 328. The guy said, we've got you there. There's only 4. He said, you're wrong. There's 328. Listen up. D-D-D-D-D-D-D. I like it.
I like it.
One night last week, Tommy had a meeting in Boston on the other side of the common from the State House, and he's walking back to his office, and 4 thugs jumped him in Boston Common. And Tommy fought them off as well as he could. 15 or 20 minutes, the battle raged on. Finally, the sheer superiority of their numbers overwhelmed them. They got him down on the ground. They went through his pockets, and they took his money. And 3 of them started to run away. The 4th guy lingered on. He said, hey, pal, tell me something. Why would you fight so long or so hard for the lousy $10 or 20 cents you had in your pocket? Tommy said, I thought you were after the $1,000 I have hidden in my shoe. The next night, a bunch of us went out to dinner, and Tommy never stays for dessert. He said, I've got to go. It's a long ride back to Fall River. I'll see you guys tomorrow. So he's walking back up to the parking lot, going up Park Street by the Paulus Center, and he had had a few drinks with dinner, and 2 nuns come out of the Paulus Center, and they see him coming. And one says to the other, we better give this one a wide berth. So as they approached Tommy, one went to the left, and the other one went to the right. Tommy walked through them, turned around, looked back, and he said, now how the hell did she do that? But I am glad to be here, and you're all wonderful to come out for tribute to a wonderful guy who's good enough to subject himself to being the roastee tonight for a worthy cause. And I'm especially delighted to be here and seeing Tommy in such good health, because we were all worried about him last summer when he had that illness. What are you laughing at? There's nothing funny about it. You didn't know about it? I talked to Janice about it the day after I heard it. I called Janice. I said, what happened? She said, Charlie, he went out in the backyard last night to pick a head of cabbage for dinner, and he bent over, and he just kept going. He keeled right over, flat out on the ground. I said, my God, Janice, what did you do? She said, what could I do? I had to open a can of peas. Anyway, they had him in the hospital, and it was touch and go for a while. So Father Mahoney from Holy Name went by the house to see Janice. He said, look, not to worry, it's just up the hospital. The doctors tell me they think he's going to be all right. But you know, even if he isn't, don't worry about it, because he'll go home to God. He's been a good husband, hasn't he? She said he certainly has, Father. He's been a good father. He's been that father. He's active in the community. She said, oh, coaches the Little League. He's on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. He works for a lot of charities. Father Mahoney said, well, it sounds like he's okay. He said, you know, Janice, there's just one thing that worries me. Janice said, what's that, Father? He said, there's been talk that Tommy's a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And Janice said, the who? Father said, the Ku Klux Klan. And seeing that she still didn't understand, he explained further, you know, those devils under the sheets. And Janice said, oh, he's a charter member of them, all right, Father. By the way, when Tommy's son Patrick was in high school, the teacher asked him one day at school, who knocked down the walls of Jericho? Patrick said, I don't know, but it wasn't me. Well, the teacher was a little astonished, so he called Janice at home. He said, I asked your son Patrick in school today who knocked down the walls of Jericho, and he said he didn't know, but it wasn't him. And Janice said, listen, if my son says that he didn't knock that wall down, then he didn't do it. Well, now the teacher is just astounded, so he calls Tommy at the State House. He says, I asked Patrick in school today who knocked down the walls of Jericho. He said he didn't know, but he didn't do it. I called your wife and told her what Patrick had answered, and she said, if he said he didn't do it, he didn't do it. Tommy said, look, I don't want any trouble. How much did the wall cost? I've kidded Janice to a purpose because all of us in public life, and most of you too realize that when the spouse is successful in public life, in elective office, be it a man or a woman, the other half is as responsible, if not more responsible, for that success. And so, if I may, Tommy, with your indulgence, I want to pay tribute to your wife here tonight in front of your constituents and your friends. And to do so, let me tell you something. If you think I'm boring, wait till you hear yourself. It's an occupational hazard for senators. They can only listen to House members for so long. Anyway, as I often do for debate on the floor of the House, when I want to make an especially good point, and I'm comfortable with my own ability to do so, I call for guidance on the poet laureate of North Cambridge, one Francis Xavier Aloysius Fagin, affectionately known to his friends as Nutsy. And Nutsy Fagin, as you might expect of a poet laureate, was kind enough to oblige with the following verse, appropriately enough entitled, An Ode to Janice Norton. A woman looked toward the heavenly gate. Her hair had become gray and old. She stood before the man of faith for admission to the fold. What have you done, St. Peter asked, to gain admittance here? I've been married to Tom Norton, she answered, for many and many a year. St. Peter rang the golden bell. He didn't ring the golden bell. But before that, the pearly gates swung open wide. St. Peter rang the bell. Come in and choose your harp, he said. You've had your share of hell. Could you hear me in there? We could hear you out here. Seriously, I am delighted to be here, and you all ought to be grateful to Tommy, not only for being willing to be the subject of this roast tonight for an exceptionally worthy cause, but also because he is one of the finest and most decent human beings it's ever been my privilege to know. I have the greatest respect for him professionally. I'm delighted and proud that he considers me his friend, and I'm delighted and proud to join with all of you in roasting him for a very worthy cause. I thank you for your kind attention. You've been the greatest Wednesday night audience I've had all week. Put your hands together for yourselves. Thank you.
You know, I think the only people that are going to be sorry they're not here tonight are the people that aren't here tonight, because tomorrow they're going to hear a lot of stories about these guys from Boston, aren't they? Give a big round of applause before we bring up the Senate President. Our number four roaster is the Senate President, Bill Bulger. Bill will soon be the longest-serving Senate President in Massachusetts history. He not only speaks many languages, but has written many papers on law. He is the one person who has gained credibility for his work in education, culture, music, and the arts, and this is Bill Bulger. Most of us remember his famous St. Patrick's Day. Your partner Tommy wrote this, Bill. His famous Patrick's Day roast that you can see on TV every St. Patrick's Day. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Senate President Bill Bulger.
Thank you so much. So nice to be here. And thank you, Lenny, for your generous introduction. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience, dear God. I was a young man when I arrived here. I now know what it must be like to be waiting for bail. And I love your jacket. How long do you have to wear it before you win the bet? Is this the microphone? Which microphone am I talking? All three, Lenny? The name is Flynn, Ray Flynn. You remind me, you know, you got a voice. You remind me of Mayor Koch. Doesn't he remind you of Mayor Koch, the same kind of voice there in, Koch, New York? These are the people from Providence, aren't they? I was talking to your governor, Governor DePreet, the other day, and he says, your governor is Governor Dukakis. But, by the way, have you been curious about what the governor will do when he leaves the governor's office? He's going to the Kennedy School of Government. He's going to teach a course there with Daniel Ortega. We know everything. That's the title of the course. We know everything. I don't know. I mean, these people must be exhausted. They must be offering this up for a soul in purgatory. Father Norton, is purgatory still there? Purgatory. We don't know what's in and what's out. You're a Roman Catholic, aren't you? See you down there with a cigar. This is just great to be here. When I was coming in the door earlier, 4 days ago, there was a woman there, and I heard her saying, there are so many politicians in that hall. She says, Ron Pena is in there, Carlton Veros, and Joan Menard, Al Heron, Tom. Everybody's in there. She says, there are so many politicians that if you were to lay them end to end, it wouldn't be a bad idea. And when I was coming out of the house tonight, up in my little district back in South Boston, Mrs. Halloran across the street, she hollers down, she says, where are you going tonight, Bulger? I says, I'm going down to Fall River for a party for Tommy Norton. She says, how much are the tickets? I says, $20 each, she says, for a big shot politician like Norton. She says, now that's what I call rubbing butter on a fat pig's ass. That's what she said. Don't forget, you didn't see me, I didn't see you. This is a bluff anyway. They don't have television down this far. I know that's a bluff. You couldn't have television. It hasn't come in yet. And you, the racetrack king, they're on to you down here, huh? You, if Norton had his way, they'd be wearing snowshoes, the horses, right around the track, winter, summer, everything. They'd be going nights. They'd be wearing headlights, the horses. Believe me. It's just terrible. All the time. Oh, and now he's the big environmentalist. Oh, yes, yes. Oh. I knew him when he thought that a nuclear freeze was a frozen daiquiri. They come around one time, the environmentalists. I had a brilliant idea. I says, I can't deal with them all of the time. They're picketing the office. And I said, Tommy, you go out and chat with those people, I said, because they're not too happy with me. So he goes out to give them an answer. Norton giving an answer. They said, look, we would like the Senate, in order to save energy, to work a 4-day work week. And Norton has to say to them, we refuse to work the extra 2 days. A brilliant answer. So this must be quite a thing for you, being up after supper, huh? Remember when you first came to the State House? Remember what you told me there? This is before the Venus de Milo had been built. Venus de Mello, Ron Pina. And the Venus de Mello had been built, and you told me, I said, gee, I says, it must be quite a thing, a kid from the country, you know, coming all the way to the city, and this place is running to the night, it must be tough. And you said to me, hey, for me, he says, geez, I'm from Fall River. For me, this is great, just being in a big building. Remember you told me that? And you're looking out across Boston Harbor, and I hear the waiter on the Pier 4, he'd been Pier 4, looking out across the water. He thought the world, it was the biggest thing in the world. And he's looking out after spending the whole day riding the elevator. And I hear the waiter saying to him, no, sir, that is not Europe. That's East Boston over there. You remember that? It's great to have you here, I'm telling you. Can I have to tell you, can I tell you a little bit of a story about, well, when Tom was first around, he was at a head table. He thought it was just going to be wonderful. So great the way people treat you so beautifully all the time. Of course, you don't have newspapers. You're very fortunate. I understand you do have some kind of a newspaper down here, the Fall River Herald News, is that right? Uh-huh. Have you heard of the Boston Globe? Well, the Globe is sort of the Fall River Herald News with verbs. I'm going to get... Yeah. The name is Flynn, Ray Flynn. They're going to murder me tomorrow, but, which means nothing. I understand it's a throwaway anyway, right? The only paper I get a decent write-up in is the South Boston Tribune because I write it myself. We send it to Ireland all the time, to where many of my constituents come from. They come from a place in Ireland up in Connemara. The O'Connors know where that is, don't you? Connemara is a beautiful place up on the west coast of Ireland. You go there for arthritis. And Lenny, you get it in about 2 weeks. And there's this nice little story told about, can I tell this silly story about the farmer and his wife and his daughter living up in Connemara? And the wife was always nagging, Joan, always nagging at the poor farmer to sell the family cow and to get some assets, and we need money, she'd always. So one morning, bright and early, the farmer and his father, you're paying close attention over there, aren't you? You're from the Sacred Heart Parish, aren't you? That's what they call it down here, the Sacred Heart. They speak a language that the strangers do not know. That's right. What kind of a nut are you over there, anyway? Back in South Boston, they'd have thrown the net over him long ago. Whoever he is, I don't know. Just remember the name Flynn. Sister Anna Gertrude must be very proud tonight of you, huh? Sister Anna Gertrude, wasn't that the name of the great nun who was the principal of the school? And you were a big disciplinary problem. And you got that woman right into purgatory, out, and she's in heaven now. By the way, this microphone is falling down, which means nothing. It's a dummy microphone. You see people in Boston with, you know, call letters for a radio station, so you figure we better have some call letters. Wait till radio comes in. It's exciting. How am I doing, Tom? You're not going to get reelected after this. No, I really believe this is the heart of America. Little jerkwater towns like this. Swansea. I just picture them. I know. I've seen you pictured out there. Saw the picture standing up against the barn with a pitchfork, husband and wife. Yankee Gothic. So anyway, where was I? And I'm talking about the little farmer and his daughter. They awaken one morning bright and early, and they yoke up the ass in the cart, and they tether the cow to the back of the cart, and then off to Galway City they go to sell the cow. And they're on the way to Galway City, happy as can be in the morning. They get into the city of Galway, the great city, and they sold the cow for 40 pounds. Ron Oliver, are you listening to this? 40 pounds. You're sitting there posing. The Klieg lights have got you, haven't they? I guess you're a real lens louse, aren't you? That's what they all tell me. You'll do anything to get on television. That's what everybody tells me. I understand you volunteered for the new Japanese rocket launch. As long as you can be strapped to the outside for maximum exposure. That's what I heard. Now, I'm not the type to give anyone the business. So anyway, in Galway City, he sells the cow for 40 pounds, and they're on their way back out to Connemara, out across the coast road, when they were overtaken by robbers. Yes, Father, robbers in Ireland. They were British robbers, but they were robbers nevertheless. And the robbers took everything, and they left the poor farmer and his daughter standing there in the middle of the road, and the farmer says, "Dear God, now what am I going to tell your mother? We've lost everything. We've sold the cow. We've lost the money. We've lost..." She says, "They didn't get the money." He says, "Where's the money?" She says, "I hid it." He says, "And where did you hide it?" She says, "In me mouth." And with that, she took the 40 pounds out of her mouth. And the farmer says, "Dear God, what a pity your mother wasn't here. We'd have saved the ass and cart as well." So, we have Tim Carter here, the banker. There's a big banker here. I actually met a lot of the folks. Where's Tim Carter, the banker? I want to make sure the banker's in so much trouble, I just assume, you not come up here. I told the photographer, no group pictures, please. End up with a banker or something. It's like being ended up, I don't mind, the banker's one thing. Then you got Mike Coughlin, the undertaker. He's here. Tommy says, he's the last friend to let you down. Mike Coughlin. Where is Mike? Of course, he's probably got a call. Pardon me? Way back. Lenny, you're from Providence. One more peep out of you, you're gone. I don't know where your garb shop is, but the Mass Turnpike will be going through it in the morning. Norton, we were going to run Norton for Congress one time. And we said, geez, we'll fix up the congressional redistricting. We'll take good care of the congressional redistricting. I said, what do you need, I said, in order to win a congressional fight? He says, Pawtucket. Remember how when you first got elected, you went to Providence to be sworn in? You were dumb. And now you're a big environmentalist. A tree hugger. You've got a lot of nerve. You've got more nerve than Liberace. Now, are you going to ever make me come all the way down here again? Horses running in the dark and running around. Oh, there's only one answer for this problem. We have a Democratic caucus. What'll we do? Slot machines. So if you're not at the track, you're playing the slot machine. It's a good idea, actually, because if television ever does come in down here, there'll be nothing else to do or something. I don't know. This is terrible. There's no God make my mouth work. What am I doing here at this hour? My wife, she's home there. She's wondering, where are you going? I said, Swansea. You should stay in Massachusetts. Oh, God. But Tommy's a great leader. We have leadership up in St. Augustine Cemetery. This is true. Father, how are you doing? Smoking a cigar and everything. Rough on the image. You'll never make a pope. I'll tell you this, Tommy will tuck him away in the Vatican. He'll find a way. You would, wouldn't you? Yeah, you got a lot of nerve. The family's working. They're on to you down here. Tommy was introduced. He's a warm man, a warm senator, a warm human being. Tom's all excited about that. He goes home and looks it up. Warm, not so hot. So anyway, by the way, how many times are we going to pay for this battleship down here? Yeah, battleship. What is this battleship? Battleship coal. It is, I tell you, it is draining the resources of Massachusetts. It must be like Kennedy's PT. What are you doing?
Just trying to get this together.
Practicing to be a doctor? Do they have hospitals down here? John Kerry was on his way over here, but he got held up in front of a mirror. We, Flynn, Ray Flynn. Hey, by the way, how is John Silber doing down this way? John Silber, if he's elected, here's a suggestion. Buy war bonds. Anyway, wham, every time he gets up. You see, I'm playing it real smart today. He said, I'm saying very little. Oh, he's as subtle as a train wreck. Oh, by the way, I understand you have the Ocean Compact with Rhode Island. Is that right? That is a lot of baloney. It's unenforceable. There's no such thing. How can you have an Ocean Compact? These microphones, these are dummy microphones, I assume. Did you hear the one about Mrs. Saltonstall speaking of the oceans? Mrs. Saltonstall, very proper Boston lady. And one time, I met her and she said, where have you been? I said, I was out in Los Angeles. Well, of course, she only recognizes the 13 original colonies. She says, how was it? I said, it was very warm, Mrs. Saltonstall. She said, well, of course it's warm out there. You're 3,000 miles from the ocean. They're slow on that because it requires geography and background. No, because you are really it. These little jerkwater towns. I really feel as though I've really gone the limit today. I mean, Swansea. There's no such place. Is it on the map? In our cemetery, Father, I was really going to tell you this about, in our cemetery, there's a tombstone, it's the oldest Catholic cemetery in New England, actually, the St. Augustine Cemetery. And on the cemetery, in one of the tombstones, it says, as I am now, soon you shall be. Are you prepared to follow me? And little Denny Galvin was tired of reading that gloomy question every day on the tombstone. So one day in big chalk letters he wrote, and the letters are still there, to follow you I am not content, till I find out which way you went. And I think, my God, these people deserve a break, and you're very patient to have put up with me, number 4 here. I want to just say this about your senator. He's splendid. It was nice to see the fact that he, as a public servant, stands in there, pitches hard, works beautifully for the people he represents and for all of the people of Massachusetts. I'm really honored to be invited here tonight to be his friend. I hope I can always be his pal. He's among the best. And you know, Seneca, the Roman philosopher, said that loyalty is the holiest good in the human heart. And I think that nice little sentence really describes our guest of honor. He is indeed a man of enormous loyalty, and his loyalty is not only to you, the people he represents, and to his family, his friends, and to the public service, but to all of the people of this state. We're fortunate to have him. It's nice to be here tonight. I'm, as I say, honored to be here with you and to be with a splendid human being and his wife, Janice. And you're great to have endured us for the good cause that we all seek to support. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a tremendous night with these people all down from Boston. I think you're right, there is something wrong with these microphones. I would like to introduce a good friend of yours out there, Tom, because he said if I didn't introduce him, he would not let you and I sleep there if we ever get thrown out of our houses again. So ladies and gentlemen, from Support Systems on North Main Street, where are you? Jerry Norton, the king of the homeless. Where are you, Jerry? And please pay your $20, Jerry. And finally, Tom, you had asked me to let a very close friend of yours say a few words here at the mic tonight, because it really has something to do with what you joined Diabetes for many years ago. So I'd like to call upon a very close friend of Bob's, of Tom's. Many of you may remember this gentleman when he was a police officer on the Fall River Police Department, and he has a little bit of a message concerning diabetes. So ladies and gentlemen, a very close friend of Tommy Norton's, let's give him a big welcome to the microphone, Mr. Bob Miller.
distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Approximately 20-some years ago, my son came down with diabetes. Many of you don't understand or fully know what sugar diabetes is. You've heard of it, but you really don't know what it does to a person or to his health. At the end of last year, my son was lucky enough to have a double organ transplant. He come out of it feeling great. Chris, would you please stand up for me? Today he's in his mid-20s. He's feeling great, and all because of people who do work in this field of sugar diabetes. Like the senator, like the Diabetes Foundation, all the doctors and all the research make it possible that we still have our sons. I just want to be up here to say thank you very much. Wonderful. Thank you.
Bobby Miller, an old friend of ours over the many, many years. Thank you very much, Bob.
Lenny, before you make another exciting announcement,
Yes?
I have it on very reliable source that someone tonight of importance is celebrating a birthday, and it's only once a year, and his name is Lenny Kaplan. Let's join him.
Thank you. Happy birthday. Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lenny. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much. You know, it's been a great day today. It is my 60th birthday. Oh, and I even get a cake. I hope it's sugar-free. If not, go to Kaplan's Bakery in Providence, the only kosher bakery in Fall River. And we make sugar-free pies and cakes. Havana Gila, yeah. You know, it has been a great day, Tom, all culminating with this. Because this morning at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, one of my very closest lady friends of 75 was on the Joan Rivers show this morning. My very first Miss Senior sweetheart of 11 years ago. We were so proud of her as she was on the Joan Rivers show talking about my pageant that I've dreamed about so long for the last 11 years. And now I'm 60, Tom, and to clinch it all, I didn't go to the Joni Rivers show because I wanted to be here with you. You've been a friend all my life, as well as have most of the other people in the audience. And I've thanked you over the years for doing many of the things you've done. I also have to say thank you to WHTB for being with us tonight so that Bill and Dave and Ira, or whatever his name is, Jimmy, Jerry, could be seen heard on radio, and that they all could be, by the way, Bill, that television is working.
I'll believe it when I see it.
It's on at 3 o'clock. It's a hell of a time during the afternoon, 3 o'clock to be on television. But we'll take any time for publicity.
I'll fly down.
But it's been my pleasure. It's been my pleasure to be here and be part of this roast for Tommy Norton. When we decided that we'd like to run a big event, this was the first thought that came in our mind. There wasn't a second guy that we thought about. We went to see Tommy. We know he's a diabetic like many of us are. We know he's a guy that would go out and help us sell tickets, which is a must. And we know that he's a guy that would take the abuse of these 4 Irishmen from the Boston and Fall River area. And he has taken it all. The only thing I'm very afraid of now is that all of a sudden he's going to get his chance. And what he might come back with, I dread the thought. But ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine, a good friend of yours, and a good friend of the head table. Let's welcome with a big round of applause, let's stand and welcome the honored roastie of 1990, Mr. Tom Norton. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Toastmaster Lenny, the Reverend Clergy, the head table. Father Norton, I'd like to thank Father Norton. After all, I mean, maybe you didn't know this, but he's my first cousin. After all, it's a perfect Irish family, a priest and a politician in the same family. We get you coming and going. As a matter of fact, I wanted to give him an Irish prayer, and it says that may those that love us, and those that don't love us, may God turn their hearts. And if he doesn't turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles so we can recognize them when they limp by. This evening, we've obviously been entertained by some of the best roasters you'll ever get and some of the greatest guys you'll ever get. With the exception of Jay Clark, and everybody else came down from Boston. It's the first time all three of them have ever seen so many trees. So he needles us about riding in elevators, and we'll take it the other way. Low Price Lenny, he's the kind of guy, Low Price missed his vocation. He should have been a parole officer. Never let anybody ever finish a sentence. Lenny, though, when you laugh, the laugh laughs with you when you laugh, and when you snore, you sleep alone. I'll never forget the one where Lenny was making a speech, and the Toastmaster leaned over to Lenny, and he said, "You're too close to the microphone." So Lenny stepped back, and as he went on with the speech, the Toastmaster said, "You're still too close to the microphone." So Lenny said, "Well, how far away should I be?" And he said, "Do you have a car?" You know, yeah, I didn't know you know this, but Lenny's a very literary man. Literary. He's very literary. He actually had a fire in his house, and he lost all of his books. Both of them. Even the one he was coloring. He told me once, he said it was cheaper to get a dog than to get a wife. A license is cheaper, and it's already got a fur coat. Well, Lenny's favorite Jewish joke is a story about the Jewish grandmother who was in Miami Beach and said she wanted to bring down her Grant's 4-year-old grandson. So they bring the kid down to Miami Beach. The grandmother takes the kid out, dolls the kid all up, puts a hat on him, the whole outfit, puts him on the sand. And while she's there looking at the kid in a beach chair, a big tidal wave comes in, takes the kid chair and all, and goes up. The Jewish grandmother runs in the water screaming and says, "If there's a God in heaven, he'll bring back to me my baby that we haven't got to enjoy, that my daughter took 9 months to deliver," and a wave came in and dropped the kid right back where he was. The grandmother walked over to the kid and said, looked it over, checked it up and down, went to the sky and said, "He had a hat, you know." Jay Clarkin. Jay Clarkin. What a tune we got on Jay Clarkin, huh? Well, it was a long night with Jay Clarkin up here, wasn't it? When submitting his bio, by the way, he's not kidding. He wrote in his bio he wanted the opportunity to kiss Senate President William Bulger's ring. What that means, folks, is he wants to become a judge. There's no other reason you'd write that. You weren't too successful in the past, and you're on the bad road again, aren't you? Of course, he's a frequent flyer to Ireland, you know, Jay. Jay goes to Ireland. As a matter of fact, one day Jay was sitting in a pub in Dublin. And as he's sitting there having a beer, a lovely little lady walks in with her hands cupped like this. And she says to the whole bar, "If anybody can guess what's in my hands, they can make love to me." Well, Jay very sarcastically says, "A pink elephant." She said, "I think we have another winner." The other day, Jay went into Anderson Little's and said to the salesman, "I'd like to get a cheap suit." And he said, "Then look in the mirror." Jay, if you look anything like your passport, you're too sick to travel. Of course, Jay is an amateur pilot, and one time he was trying to land in his plane at the Fall River Airport, and he said to the tower called him and said, "Give me your height and your position," and Jay answered, "I'm 6, I'm 5'10", and I'm sitting in the left-hand seat." So you know what you're dealing with if you ever need a lawyer. Don't get him. But you know what? Jay had, one night Jay was coming home, and a policeman bumped into him. He was trying to put his house key into a lamppost. And the policeman was very nice to him, and he said to him, "Sir," he said, "that's not the key to your house." He said, "There's no one home, sir." He says, "There's got to be. There's a light on upstairs." Jay, have you ever tried vodka and carrot juice? Same results, except you see better when you're going through it. David Finnegan. You know that David ran for the mayor of Boston. We all know that, right? Unsuccessfully, of course. But his slogan was, "If you fool all of the people some of the time, that's enough to get elected." Well, it didn't work. David felt so unlucky that if he bought an aspirin factory, we'd repeal the income tax. I don't know what it means. I don't know. Somebody gave it to me. Must have won a Clarkin joke. Let me bring you... I did. Let me bounce back from that. Of course, I don't know if you know this, but...
Wait. I don't get that joke. Furthermore, you couldn't bounce back.
Oh, no.
Get the other card.
Forget it.
By the way, you're testing the limits of Christian charity tonight.
I know, but I had to listen to you guys for about 2 hours. I mean... Actually...
You're getting even.
You didn't know that Flaherty and Finnegan used to work in the Shannon Airport, did you? No, really. The both of them worked there, and they used to load the Concorde up. One day, one of them tasted a little bit of the jet fuel, liked it, and they stole 40 gallons, brought it home to their apartment. So one day, Flaherty's trying to get up in the middle of the night. He goes by a mirror, and his arms are running up the side of his body, and his nose is starting to get to be about 3 feet long. He's terrified, and the phone rings. And it's Finnegan. And he says, "Charlie, how you doing?" He said, "I'm not doing well." He said, "My nose is 3 feet long and my arms are going up the side of his back." He said, "Have you been to the bathroom yet?" He said, "No." He said, "Don't go. I'm calling you from Tokyo." Finnegan recently on a trip. That was all right. That was all right, wasn't that? Was that all right? Finnegan was coming back. He was in the airport in Logan, and he was running around with tears streaming down his face, and an attendant walked over to him and said to him, "Are you homesick already?" He said, "No." He said, "I lost my luggage." He said, "How did you do that?" He said, "The cork fell out." That ain't bad, is it? It's a tough crew here to work with. You don't got to listen to them all night.
By the way, what's for breakfast?
Ronnie, are the eggs ready? What? I'm almost done. I'm almost getting to you. I'm almost getting.
These people must be camels or something.
What kind of people do you have down here? No one has left the room. Except myself. I mean, do you drink coffee or what? That's a remarkable thing. I'll tell you, I'm going to turn this into the medical center down in Atlanta. They'll all be up here checking the people from Swansea. It's a new find, you know?
I know.
Why don't you sit down?
You've done a great job.
Tommy, what are they? Well, all right, I'm going to read a joke book. Representative Flaherty comes from Cambridge. Being House Majority Leader is like being the best man at a wedding, waiting for the groom to meet his maker. How would you like to be George Kavarian hearing something like that? Charlie, you've really had a rough year in the House. Did you ever get the feeling that you were going nowhere and have already arrived? That's right. House Majority Leader Flaherty, be thankful for your problems. For if they were less difficult, someone with less ability would have your job. Oh, by the way, we've all read where the space program has the world's largest telescope. Oh, it's so powerful that you can see a firefly from 20 miles away. What you don't know is that the Senate President has a contract with NASA to use the telescope to find out what's going on in the House. This is a grown man.
Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy, you want to go home? You can take my gift with you. I don't want the gift. I mean, the jokes are old enough to vote. I can't imagine what would be in this thing. Jokes. This comes under the heading of jokes. A lot of people are desperate today. You bet they're desperate. A fellow walked up to me and said, "Have you seen a policeman around here?" I said, "No." So he said, "Stick him up." With all the troubles in the world today, if Moses came down now, the tablets that we would be carrying would be innocent. Oh, God. There are so many candidates this year. What does that say? The Republicans may not have enough promises to go around. Oh, that's a good dig at the Republicans. They'll lose now. Right. They don't have a chance anymore. During my 12 years in the House of Representatives, this is for you, Flaherty. During my 12 years in the House of Representatives, Charlie and I sat next to each other in the chambers, and I know he'll succeed. And to you, Charlie Flaherty, an Irish toast. May you die in bed at 95 years old, shot by a jealous husband. Oh, God, help us and save us. Father, we'll all be in heaven after this. Purgatory. Is purgatory still there? I don't know. You're changing everything. Flynn, Ray Flynn. Look at them over there. It's ridiculous. Oh, a joke. This is under the heading of jokes, so you know you're supposed to laugh. It's ridiculous for the Russians to accuse us of spying to find out what's going on in Russia. We're kept too busy trying to find out what's going on in Washington. Oh, God. Let me do it. Oh, now he's going to do me. I am safe.
I'm glad I came. Geez, I'm glad I came.
Yeah.
Next year they're going to roast you, Carl. Senate President Bulger's been against the wall so many times the handwriting's on him. He's from a tough district in South Boston. If you see a cat with a tail there, you know it's a tourist. Of course, Billy goes to Ireland a lot. One time he went to a club. No, let me do this. I got one last one. Just one last one. Let me tell the one last one. All right, last one.
Go ahead.
Before I wind it up seriously.
Hey, I can hardly wait. Say the joke. Say the joke.
You remember the time you went to Northern Ireland and you were out one night and a gunman put a gun to your ribs?
I will never forget it.
And he asked you at that time, were you Catholic or were you Protestant?
And
you
I said,
yes.
I am Jewish.
Right, and he said, I got to be the luckiest Arab in all of Ireland.
You're laughing at that joke, Lenny. Where in the name of God have you been all these years? You must have been in Providence, Rhode Island, or some place like. What do you have? You got another one. No, this is a killer. You got another one there. No, but listen. If we waited for you to read them.
I'm going to read. No, it's closing.
Oh, you're really closing, Tommy? You've got to close. You're not going to get away with this.
I know it. I want to close.
You're not going to get away with this. I suppose you people are electing him just to get even with me. I've never seen such a punishment in my life. You know, I arrived here. You told me to be here at 6 o'clock. It's 10:15. A lot of people get milk in the morning and everything else around here. How am I doing? Am I making a lot of friends down here?
This is a tough act, isn't it? This is a tough act. You guys wouldn't do this that easy, would you? I'm doing it.
Whatever you're doing, you better...
Well, let me just say this in conclusion. I obviously can't handle the jokes. They keep moving the cards. I can't do that. I just want to thank, really, truthfully, very seriously, in closing, really, because it has been a long night. I want to thank...
No, don't take your
I'm going to take my time. I'm going to take my time. I truthfully do want to thank the roasters who have come here tonight, whoever the hell they are. You know, who cares? Jesus. I want to especially thank the Senate President. I know I can't be reelected again in Swansea. You know, you've done a great job for me there, and the television does work. But everybody here, the whole head table, and Lenny particularly, and all of the people that have been so good to us to do this, I really like to thank everybody for being so nice about tonight, and especially my friends here, and they are my friends. Kind of tough to pick your friends, but they are my friends. I'm very appreciative for all of them to take their time out to do what they did tonight for a Diabetes Association. I want to thank Father Bill and Richard Costa and Mary Louise Nunes, Mark Thibodeau, Low Price Lenny.
Why don't we just have everyone stand up?
No, not yet. Not yet. But you know, I hope you've had a good time in the sense that I think we got you to laugh. And if you had a good time, and we hope that you did have a good time, you felt as if it's a good cause. So with that, I'm just going to close by saying I want to thank you very much for being here with us. We're going off the air. I'm going to ask him for a job after this is over because I know I can't be reelected. But we thank you very much for all of your help, and we'd like to give a little special thing to Ann Kelly, if you don't mind, Ann. Open it up, Charlie. You gotta open it up, because you think I'm going. They're saying one box is bigger than the other over here. You know? And this is for you. Ann, of course, has spent a lot of time and did a lot of work for the Diabetes Association. She's very familiar with it, and we just want to give you a little something.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And this is a nice little Irish cottage. I want to thank you, Tommy, okay? I wish it was big enough so I could sleep in it down here tonight. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we even say goodbye...
You're the guy that was here earlier in the evening.
And I'm back again. And I got to tell you something, Bill and Dave and Jay and everything. So help me. There was supposed to have been 5 roasters tonight. I also was supposed to be doing roasting. But I got to tell you something, folks. I've been around fun all my life. I've considered my life one big bundle of fun. But never have I've got a headache. I have never laughed so much in one night as I've laughed. And I want all of you to stand up and give these guys from Boston a tremendous round of applause.
Foul River. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to get the last word in. If we took your mind off the budget, it worked.
Thank you, Bill. God bless you, Bill and Dave and the rest of the guys. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, before we end, I'm sure you've all seen this beautiful picture of young Tom when he was about 7 or 8 years old. And we put a little plaque together for Tom with the same picture, Tom. And it says, to our illustrious Tom Norton, Senator, good sport and Samaritan, good luck always, and giant thanks from the Diabetes Association. Tom, and listen, let me just finish by saying this, Tom. really, a couple of months ago when I got together with you and I said we had an idea, we like to roast somebody, and we like to use you, you got your sister in the room and said, okay, let's get together, let's do it. The first thing we said was, if it can't be a funny roast, if they're just going to give you all compliments all night, let's not even do it. Well, I'm going to tell you, your friends have done an awful tune on you because I'm sure they love you as much as the people out here do. So God bless you. From the Diabetes Association, I hope you'll be back with us many, many more years. Your picture. Again, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you all, and thanks for sticking around the whole evening.